Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Parsha, Parshas Vayakhel-Pikudei. This is the very end of Sefer Shmos, and it ends with something that the entire Torah itself begins with, and something that is very important to us every single week of our lives, as we're going to see. Many years ago, I remember being in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot, talking about over 20 years ago, I believe, and Rav Shlomo Brevda Zatzal was giving a speech. He was giving a shir in Har Nof, one of the days of Chol HaMoed, and I went to hear him speak, and it was in Hebrew, which was entertaining in of itself. It was me working to understand all the Hebrew, but Rav Brevda had a fascinating way that he would transmit himself in Hebrew. And he was telling over the famous story in Sefer Ezra, which is the book of Ezra, which deals with Klal Yisrael when the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. They ended up in Bavel in Babylonia for 70 years. And then it's the exodus really from Babylonia, coming back to Eretz Yisrael and building the second Beis HaMikdash. And over there, Ezra tells over the following story, that when the second Beis HaMikdash, the second temple, was built, and you could imagine the tremendous excitement Klal Yisrael was still remembering from 70 years before the destruction. They knew what it was like to be in Golus, to be in exile. They knew what it was like to be in Bavel and Babylonia, surrounded by all of around the non-Jews. And finally, the message comes, it's time to come up. They make Aliyah, they go back to Eretz Yisrael, they band together, they build the Beis HaMikdash, and now there's what's called the Chanukas HaMizbeach, there's the inauguration of the Beis HaMikdash. It must be the happiest day of their entire life. And yet the Pasuk tells us that when the Beis HaMikdash was sanctified, when it was inaugurated on that day, many of the Kohanim, the priests, the Leviim, the Levies, and the elder members of the families, the ones that saw the first Beis HaMikdash. So now we're saying that these elderly people, they were little children when the Beis HaMikdash was the first one was standing in its place. But they saw it. They saw the first one the way that it was. So when they saw this one right now, the founding of the new house, they cried a loud cry. And others were shouting. But these elders, they were crying when the second Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt, which is something that's hard to understand. It's like the most exciting day in Klal Yisrael. It's the moment of exultation. The Jewish people have just conquered the enemy. They come back to Eretz Yisrael. They're standing in Yerushalayim, and now the Beis HaMikdash is there. There was never a building. The Gemara says, whoever didn't see the building of the second Beis HaMikdash never saw a beautiful structure in their entire life. It was the most exquisite, the most marvelous, most beautiful building you could possibly imagine. And the elders who saw the first Beis HaMikdash, they were crying. Asked Rabbi Brevda, why were they crying? What was so sad? They should have been so ecstatic like everybody else. And he said over the following mashal, the following story. He said, imagine you're in Eretz Yisrael and there's something called the Chamsin. I don't know, we live in Chamsin in Los Angeles. It is a heat wave. A Chamsin, but it's not like a regular heat wave. It is so hot, you feel like you're just going to melt into the ground. There's no air. It's like an oven. And in the olden days, there weren't so many air conditioners. When I was a bacher in yeshiva, and there was a chamsin, you thought you were just gonna explode. There were no air conditioners. You had a fan that would just blow the hot air around. There was nothing. I once walked into one of the houses of one of my rabbis, and his kids were sitting there. They had taken all their t-shirts, soaked them in water. They were just sitting in wet shirts. That's the only way you could breathe. So he said, imagine you're in Eretz Yisrael, and there's a chamsin. It's about 115, 120 degrees, and it's like an oven outside. and you are schwitzing, and you are boiling, and you're wiped out. And you're walking, and you're getting close to shul. Now this shul, has an amazing AC. It's always nice and cold, just like Makar Chaim, Edwin. It's perfect temperature all the time. And you're walking down the street, and you're boiling, and you're schwitzing, and your body is aching, and you can barely breathe, but you see the shul in sight, and you say to yourself, okay, Baruch Hashem, in a moment's time, I'm going to be inside the shul, and the air is going to be blowing all over me. I'll be able to breathe once again. And you walk into the shul, and you're so excited, and you open the door of the shul, and it's even hotter inside the shul than it is outside on the streets. And said Rabbi, you know what you just realized? Hamazgan lo oved. The air conditioning is not working. And more painful than being out on the street in the chamsin when you're boiling, kastroiling, is when you think you're going to walk into the shul and it's going to be nice and cold, and you're going to get hit with the burst of air, and then you realize, Hamazgan lo oved, the air conditioning doesn't work. Said Rab Revda, that's exactly what was going on at the time of the building and the inauguration of the second Beis HaMikdash. In the first Beis HaMikdash, there was something called Shechina. The divine presence was resting himself inside the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Jewish people that were there, they experienced what it means to come in close contact with Shechina. And then there was a Chorban, a destruction, and the Jewish people were exiled into Bavel, into Babylonia. And all of those 70 years that they were sitting in exile, they were waiting, and they were davening, and they were praying, and they were hoping. The day is going to come when we go back to Yerushalayim, and we're going to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, and the Shechina is going to come down once again the way that it was, and we'll re-experience what it means for a Jew to have Shechina in his life. And so then Ezra says, come, the 70 years is over. It's time to go up to Yerushalayim. We're going to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. And they build something that is so incredible to look at. The Gemara tells us, if you didn't see this, you never saw beauty in your life. And then comes the inauguration. And they come to the Beis HaMikdash, and there's music, and there's singing, and there's people that are with revelry. And the cries of the Zikanim, of the elders, is so loud. You can barely hear the music that is playing. Said Rab Revda, why were they crying so much? Hamazgan lo oved. The air conditioning in the second Beis HaMikdash is not working. What was that? The Shechina, as we know, did not dwell in the second Beis HaMikdash. And when the people that knew what Shechina was, when they knew what it meant to be in contact, when they knew what it meant to walk inside the doorways of the Beis HaMikdash and be overwhelmed by the Shechina, when they felt it was missing, it became the saddest day of their life. Because if you know what Shechina is, and then it's not there, if you experienced Klal Yisrael coming together as one on the regal, in the holidays, and you knew what it was like for the Jewish people to stand together and bask in the glory of the Shechina, and when you walk in, it's empty. It's not there. Says Rab Revda, that's what it means that the elders were crying. They were crying because they realized the Shechina, the air conditioning, it wasn't working. The Torah teaches us in this week's Parsha something that we've learned already. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of time. But we learn about the great mitzvah of Shabbos, of keeping the Shabbos Kodesh, the holy day of Shabbos. And there is a vast difference between a person who has Shabbos and doesn't have Shabbos. It is Shemayim v'aretz, it is heaven and earth, it is Yoimam v'layla, it is day and night. Because Shabbos, as we're going to see, is the investment of the Shechina in your life, And a life without Shabbos means Hamazgan lo oved, the air is turned off. And the Shekhinah is not going to be there. There's a beautiful story about a Yid, a Jew in Eretz Yisrael from many, many years ago, when it wasn't always so common that every single store in Israel was closed on Shabbos. Today in Yerushalayim, it's very hard to find a store that's open on Shabbos, Baruch Hashem. And certainly in the more religious areas where a lot of religious people are, you'll never find the store, you'll never find the car, you won't find anything. Everything is shut down. It's such an amazing feeling to walk through the streets in Yerushalayim on Shabbos Kodesh. Not a car, not a noise, not a store, nothing. Just Yidden keeping Shabbos. It's amazing. But years ago, it wasn't always so simple. And there was a Yid by the name of Pinchas Menachem Malach. That was his name. And he was devoted to Yiddishkeit, devoted to his mitzvahs, and his favorite day of the week, you could imagine, Shabbos Kodesh. And in the neighborhood where he lived, there were some stores that unfortunately, at this time, at this juncture in history, they were still staying open on Shabbos. And it bothered this Reb Pinchas Menachem to no end. How could it be a Yid, a Jew, keeps his store open on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael? How could you do such a thing? And there was one sweet old Jew who owned a fruit store. And sadly, it was open on Shabbos. And every Shabbos, when Pinchas Menachem would walk to his house, he'd have to pass this store, and he would see this sweet old Jew that was there, and he asked himself, how is it possible? How could he be open on Shabbos? He looks too sweet to stay open on Shabbos. So one day in the middle of the week, it was the afternoon, his business was very slow. This Pinchas Menachem walks into the fruit store. And he sees the owner. And he says, Rabbi Yid, he says, you know, Shabbos is Shabbos. He said, I don't understand. You're such a sweet person. You're such a special person. You look like you come from an old country that you understand what Shabbos is all about. How are you staying open on Shabbos? He said, I don't have a choice. I wish that I did. He said, but if I close on Shabbos, my customers are going to go someplace else on Saturday, and then they're not going to come back to me on Sunday, and then on Monday they'll go someplace else, and I'll lose all my business. I feel like I have no choice. My whole business depends upon me staying open for Shabbos. Now just parenthetically, if Shabbos is the Makor HaBracha, the source of all blessing in the week and in your life, then obviously we understand that this thinking is illogical, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and Hashem decides how much money a person is going to have. He decides their financial success, and therefore if He tells you Shabbos is the source of all of the bracha in your livelihood, then of course staying closed brings you more bracha. But this old man didn't see it that way. And so Rav Pinchas Menachem said to him, I hear what you're saying, but I want to tell you a mashal, I want to tell you a parable that the Horowitz said. There was a man that used to frequent a certain store, and he one day comes to that store, and he puts his hand on the doors to open it up, and lo and behold, the store is locked. He looks up and he sees the sign is still hanging over the store. And he says, okay, you know what, maybe an emergency came, the guy was in a rush, he ran away, I'll come back in a couple of days. He comes back a couple of days later, he goes to the doorway of the store, he puts his hand on the knob, on the handle to open, locked. The store is locked. He looks up and he sees the sign is still hanging over the store, and he says, okay, you know what, maybe there was a tragedy in the family. Maybe there's some kind of family emergency, he had to go out of town. I don't know. But you know what? I'll come back in a couple more days to be able to use his store. The man comes back a third time. And he goes to the handle and he goes to open it, and again, the door is locked. And he looks up, and this time, the sign is gone. And when the man saw that the sign of that store was gone, he realized if the sign is gone, the owner of the store, and the store is gone, the store is closed, it's out of business. Says the Horowitz, Shabbos is an ois, it's a sign between me, Hashem, and Beinecha and you, Klal Yisrael. And as long as Shabbos is there, so then Shabbos itself is the greatest sign in the world that you're still around. You're still in the game. You're still together with me. But once that the sign of Shabbos is gone, says the Horowitz, once it's no longer hanging over your storefront anymore, when Shabbos is gone, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know if you're still there or you're not there anymore. You take down the sign and the store is closed. So he said to this man, the owner of the store, who's keeping the store open on Shabbos, he says, you might think that you have other mitzvahs, and the man showed him all his receipts from all the tzedakah, all the charity that he'd given. You might think you have other mitzvahs, but if the sign is down from your store, which is called Shabbos, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks down at you and he says, you know what? The store and the life is closed. I cannot tell you what to do, but I would like to recommend. You're not a young man, he told him. One day you're going to have to go leave this world and you're going to meet your Maker, the Ribbono Shel Olam. How are you going to answer for all the weeks that you were mechala, that you desecrated the Shabbos? How are you going to answer him? Think about the sign. And think about the sign that you're not hanging up anymore about your Yiddishkeit to Hashem. And he left. And that week on Shabbos, Pinchas Menachem was walking to his home, and he glanced at the store, and he sees, lo and behold, there's a sign on the store that says, we are closed in honor of the Sabbath. We will open again on Sunday morning. Wow. Unbelievable. You know how many times we tell people to do something and they never listen to us? How many times you give them advice, they could care less what you have to say? I was just listening to a lecture today about a person who's very much involved with kids and vaping. And he said that in the room, while you're giving a lecture to these teenage boys about vaping, there's different types of kids. One of the kids is, while you're telling him why vaping is so bad, he's under the table vaping. Doesn't listen to anything you have to say. So you tell a person Shabbos, you tell him this and that. He listened. Wow, said Pinchas Menachem, amazing. The week comes, the week goes, he's walking back the next Shabbos, and he passes by the store, and it's closed, and this time there's a sign on the door. And it says, please forgive us, we will be closed for the following week. Our dear father passed away this week. And we're sitting Shiva as is customary, and we will open up next week when the Shiva is over. And Pinchas Menachem said to himself, could you imagine? This Jew spent a whole life being Mechalel Shabbos, desecrating Shabbos. The last Shabbos, which turned out to be the last Shabbos of his life, he decided he's not going to go in to the store. He's going to hang the sign proudly. I'm a Shomer Shabbos. I keep the Shabbos. And the Shabbos ended up testifying for him when he went before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Shemayim. Says Rav Hirsch, we know the Torah tells us, the Gemara tells us, that there's a very unusual juxtaposition in the verses in the last couple of Parshas, and that is that whenever it speaks about the building of the Mishkan, it also speaks about the keeping of Shabbos. And so the Gemara wants to know, what's the connection? What does the building of the Mishkan and the keeping of Shabbos have to do with each other? And so the Gemara tells us famously that whatever malachas, whatever activities they did to build the Mishkan, those things that are called malacha, work, Work which has a purpose, work which has an intent, work which is creative, which is almost like creating things in this world. Any of the work that they did when they built the Mishkan, the Malacha, Chazal teach us, the Torah puts them together to show us, you're not allowed to do any of that on Shabbos Kodesh. There's 39 malachas, 39 prohibited activities that were done inside of the Mishkan, how they were building it, but you're not allowed to build the Mishkan on Shabbos. So we learned that whatever they weren't allowed to build on Shabbos, we're not allowed to do on Shabbos either. And that means all of these 39 malachas, these activities. Says Rav Hirsch, a beautiful, amazing idea. We've spoken about before what the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle was all about. And we explained that it was a nace, it was a miracle. Because it was Klal Yisrael, human beings, flesh and blood, taking all of these materials, these raw materials, the gold, the silver, the copper, the wool, and the crimson, and the different colors, and they would harness all of their energies together as one. It's this week's Parsha called Chacham Lev, all the wise-hearted individuals. They had wisdom that came from divine wisdom. They were slaves. How does a slave know how to craft gold? How does a slave know how to thread and make wool, beautiful pareiches, beautiful currency? How do they know how to do that? How do they know how to dye things with magnificent colors? They don't. But they were kol chacham lev. They had a wise heart. They had a strong desire to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted them to do. And Hashem made a nace in the merit that they so badly wanted to do, make the Mishkan the way that Hashem wanted to. He filled them up with wisdom. He filled them up with knowledge. He filled them up with skills that they never had before until that very moment. And they built a beautiful Mishkan. But what did they do? They took from the physical world and they made an edifice down here in this physical world that allowed the Shekhinah to come and dwell. That's miraculous. We've spoken about this before. That you can make something physical out of wood, out of gold, out of silver, out of wool, out of all these different materials, and the Shekhinah, who has no body, he has no shape, he has no form, he's not bound by space, not by time, nothing. He's going to be able to dwell inside the Mishkan. The power of the Jewish people working together, wanting Hashem in their life, allowed to bring the Shekhinah down to this world. That means the Mishkan represents the Shekhinah. That's the name. Mishkan is Shochin, comes from the word Shekhinah. What is Shabbos, says Rav Hirsch? Shabbos is all of the malachas, all of the activities they did in the building of the Mishkan, which when it was done in the right way, brought the Shekhinah down into this world. When I desist from all of those malachas, all of those activities, on Shabbos, I don't do a thing. I don't even lift a finger barely. So you know what it does? It allows for the Shekhinah to come down inside of me. During the week, I'm busy in the world of Malacha. I'm busy in the week of doing, I'm creating, I'm building, I'm doing, I'm working, I'm going places here and there. I have a lot of distractions in my life. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of air conditioners that are blowing their cold air. A lot of stuff going on in the world. There's the news you have to watch at least 65 times a day to make sure that you didn't miss anything. You have to watch another clip of Trump destroying the world. And then this one, and that, you have no choice because we live in America, so we have to be holding on the cutting edge of every news clip and every reel that there is. Otherwise, you're a loser. You have nothing to talk about anybody else with. So the whole week we're busy, malacha, 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 malacha. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shabbos, no malacha. On Shabbos, you don't do anything. You eat and you drink and you zitz and you sit and you learn Torah, you come to shul, you daven, you spend time with your family, nothing, no phone, no computer, no car, no radio, no music, nothing. Turn it all off. You know what happens when you pull yourself away from all of that malacha? Just like when you worked hard to build the Mishkan. You were the one that was bringing the Shekhinah down into the Mishkan. When you work hard on Shabbos not to engage in the malacha, So then you are creating room in your heart, and room in your life, and room in your house, and room in your family for the Shekhinah to be there. That's the power of Shabbos. And therefore the difference between a house that is keeping Shabbos and a house that is not keeping Shabbos is like the first Beis HaMikdash to the second Beis HaMikdash. There's a house that you feel the warmth, you feel the Kedusha, you feel the Shekhinah, you feel the holiness and sanctity. And then there's the house that doesn't have that Shekhinah dwelling inside. There's that person who's missing the real connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he gets involved in the malachas of this world. Chazal were so specific, they read a whole Masechta called Shabbos, one of the biggest Masechtas in all of Shas. And there's a whole section in the Shulchan Aruch all about Shabbos. It's thick and big. And there's hundreds of books out there in the world in English and in Hebrew and in Russian and in Farsi, you name it, any language that you want, so you can learn the laws of Shabbos, because anyone who keeps the Shabbos is going to keep them. And the person who is a Shabbos-dik Yid, has a Shabbos Kodesh in his life, says Rav Hirsch, you then are responsible for the Shekhinah resting and dwelling inside of you, inside of your home, inside of your family. And Shabbos has a hashpah, has an influence on the entire week. The way that you keep the Shabbos is the way that your week is going to go as well. And this really takes us back to the beginning of the Chumash. In Breishis, when Hashem is creating the world, so he gets to the seventh day, he finishes 6 days of creation, mankind, the pinnacle of that 6th day of creation. Vayakhel-Pikudei bayom hashvi, Hashem rested on that 7th day, malachto asher asa, from the work, the malacha that he did. Vayishbais bayom hashvi, and he rested on the 7th day, mikol malachto asher asa, from all of the malacha that he performed. Says Rashi over here the following idea. Mahayolam chaser, what was the world missing before Shabbos came along? The world is perfect. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks back on the creation, and Vayar Lakim has called Sha'as, everything is up. It's very good, it's excellent, everything is great. So what was the world missing? Says Rashi, Menucha. The world was missing menucha, peace of mind, tranquility, rest. Bas Shabbos, when Shabbos came to the world, Bas menucha, peace and tranquility came to the world. Kolsa v'nigmara malachta hamalacha, at that moment when Hashem completed and he finished all of the malacha, all of the work, and the world stops, that's when menucha, that's when peace and harmony and relaxation, tranquility comes into this world. And the Sifsei Chachamim explains over here the following idea. What is the purpose of this world? To make money? What's the purpose of this world? To get the new iPhone 75, whatever it's called these days? What's the purpose of this world? The purpose of this world is when Hashem created the world, Breishis bar Elokim, Breishis in the beginning, Bishvil Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for Torah, and created the world for mitzvahs. But you know what? Says the Sifsei Chachamim, we live a very busy life. It's hard to learn during the week. It's hard to concentrate during the week. It's hard to daven with kavanah, with intention during the week. My mind is flying in so many different places. I have business meetings, I have to go. I'm a busy person. I got a carpool, I have to jump in the car, I got to go here and there. I'm so busy. So the week is very hard. I don't have menucha, I don't have that peace of mind that I need to be able to focus in. Comes along Shabbos, and Shabbos brings menucha. What's the menucha of Shabbos? The menucha of Shabbos is that the world shuts down. All of those malachas, all of those activities that I'm busy making this, and I'm busy doing that, and I'm busy ripping this, and I'm busy cooking this, and I'm busy building this, stops. And when that stops, comes into my life menucha, peace, tranquility. My mind is relaxed. When that happens, what can I do? I can learn. The Ben Ish Chai says that the Torah that a person learns on Shabbos, if I remember the number correctly, is 1,000 times greater than the Torah that they learn during the week. Because it's very good what we're saying over here. Because during the week, there's a lot of lachats, there's a lot of stress, a lot of tension. It's hard for a person just to be focused in on what he's learning. Come to daven on a Monday morning, you're half asleep, you got a lot going on the rest of the day, you're already calculating in your mind how much stuff you have to do. It's hard to concentrate. You're running from Mincha Marav, you just drove the 101 in the traffic on a day like today, and then you have to come in and daven like a mensch. It's almost impossible. But comes along Shabbos, and you don't do any malacha, you don't do any work. You desist and you detach and disconnect yourself from all of that. What comes into your mind and your heart and your soul? Menucha. And when peace comes inside of you, you're relaxed and you're rested. Then the learning, it's a different learning. The davening is a different davening. The midos are different midos. Your conversation is a different conversation. The food even tastes different on Shabbos. Everything is different. Shabbos is the makor habracha, the source of all blessing in a person's life. What you glean on a Shabbos, what you gain. I just met a guy the other day, he's a mashkiach. I don't want to make you feel bad. He's a mashkiach that he works for the OU, I believe. For years and years and years, he was working on Shabbos. Not like he was doing things that you're not allowed to do. You're allowed to be mashkiach on Shabbos. It's a tremendous chesed. Someone's making a bar mitzvah, someone's making a sheva brachas, they're making a Shabbaton. You need to have a mashkiach in the kitchen to make sure everything is kosher. That work is not like he's turning on fire. He's allowed to do all of that. The guy said to himself one day, he says, I don't understand. Shabbos is the makor habracha, is the source of all blessing. So I leave my wife, and I leave my kids, and I go to work in a hotel for Shabbos, because I got to make money. So I leave my wife, and I leave my kids Friday night, I got to go be mashkiach by this bar mitzvah celebration that's going on over here. So I said to myself, am I a maimin? Do I believe in Hashem? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that Shabbos is the makor habracha, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the source of all blessing comes from how I celebrate my Shabbos, so then why in the world am I going to the hotel? Why am I going to the hall to make $30 an hour so I can make some more money? Why am I doing that? And he called his boss, and he says, I resign from working anymore on Shabbos. I'll work Sunday, even Saturday night. Saturday night through Friday afternoon, give me as many hours as you want. Shabbos Yom Tov belongs to Hashem. And the guy told me he doesn't make a lot of money. He's so happy. He's home with his family every single week for Shabbos, celebrating Shabbos. He learns much more now than he ever learned before. And he's sitting there, he's smiling, smiling, smiling. The happiest guy in the world. What you gain on Shabbos, you carry with you into the week. If Shabbos is a yom menucha, it's a day of rest. It's a day of tranquility. And you can learn more, and you can daven better, you can have better quality time with your wife and your children, and you can bond, and there's good midos, there's good character traits, and you speak in the right way. And yeah, a l'chaim, not bad. One l'chaim is not a bad thing. And a good bowl of cholent and some good babka cake, yeah, it's all good. But the menucha that you get on Shabbos, you're supposed to carry that with you into the week. Makor habracha, the source of all blessing. There's a story of one of the great Mekubalim, one of the great mystical rabbis, whose name was Shalom Sharabi. He was a gigantic Mekubal, and he was a Kabbalist. And he was also the Rosh Yeshiva of Nahar Shlomo, of a Kabbalistic yeshiva in Jerusalem. And one Shabbos afternoon, he is walking down the street, flanked by his Talmidim, his students, and a motorcycle starts driving through the neighborhood. Now, this is Jerusalem. This is Shabbos Kodesh. Most people are not driving their motorcycles down the street. And this guy is driving down at full speed ahead, and when he sees the rabbi and his students walking down the street, he begins revving up the engine even more to bother them. And he comes and he parks like right in front of this holy rabbi and his students. And now the students were very upset. And they came to defend the honor of the Rabbi, and they came to this man driving the motorcycle, and they said, "Chutzpah! What are you doing? You know who this is? This is Rabbi Sharabi. What are you doing? You drive into his neighborhood on Shabbos on your motorcycle? What are you doing?" So the great Kabbalist Rabbi Sharabi says, "Shh, leave him alone. He's not the one that's driving. It's the motorcycle that's riding on Shabbos. But it doesn't matter, because from now on," he turns to the fellow, he says, "your motorcycle is Shomer Shabbat. The motorcycle is going to guard Shabbos." The man starts laughing, but he suddenly hears the motorcycle engine turns off. So he goes to turn it on, dead. Can't get it on. He tries another time, it's dead. Rabbi Sharabi says, "I told you. From now on, your motorcycle is Shomer Shabbat. Don't even waste your time." He said, "Listen, why don't you come to my house? We have delicious chamin, delicious cholent. I have tasty foods. I have a bed that you can rest in. Just come to my house, enjoy the meal with us, sing some songs. When Shabbat is over, your motorcycle will come back to life." What do I have to lose? My motorcycle is dead. I have no place to go right now. The nice rabbi's invited me to his house. Chamin, some good cholent sounds good. Okay. He comes into the house. They put a yarmulke on his head. He sits down with Rabbi Sharabi. They have kiddush. They wash for hamotzi. They have challah. They eat together. The chamin. He sings some zmirot, some songs, speaks a little divrei Torah, and the guy hangs out the whole Shabbos. Shabbos is over, the 3 stars go up, the dark comes into the sky. The man goes outside his motorcycle. Boom, Tchias HaMesim comes back to life just like that. Unbelievable. The rabbi was right. So the guy is going around the whole week, driving his motorcycle, doing everything he does. Comes along Friday, the guy's at home this time. He's not even by Rabbi Sharabi. The guy is at home. Friday night he tries to go someplace, starts the motorcycle. Doesn't work. He's trying it again and again and again. And he says, "What did this rabbi do? He cursed my motorcycle. He said it's Shomer Shabbat, and it is Shomer Shabbat. It's keeping the Shabbos." It goes on like this for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks in a row, the guy tries to ride his motorcycle on Shabbos. The engine will not start. The minute that Shabbos is over, boom, Tchias HaMesim comes back to life. And the man began to think to himself, if my motorcycle can be Shomer Shabbat, can keep the Shabbos, then why can't I keep the Shabbos? If my motorcycle is not going to drive on the Shabbos, then I should be able to keep the Shabbos also. And he ran back to Rabbi Sharabi. And he told them, "Rebbe, I got the message. My motorcycle is Shomer Shabbat. I also want to become Shomer Shabbat. Teach me, Rebbe." And the great Mekubal, the great Kabbalist Rabbi Sharabi, sat with this man for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he taught him what it means to be a Jew. And he taught him the laws of Shabbat. And he showed him how beautiful the Shabbos is. And this man became a Baal Teshuvah. He became a religious man. And he began keeping Shabbos. And today he has children that are keeping Shabbos, living a holy life. Because the makor, the source of all of the bracha in one's life, is coming from the way that we keep the Shabbos. If we keep it, there's a sign. Hashem says, oh, he's still here. If we desist from all the malachas, from all the hard work, what ends up happening? Just like when we worked hard to build the Mishkan, we brought the Shekhinah down to this world, by holding ourselves back and not doing the malacha. So then we invite the Shekhinah into our lives. And so let's not be like the elders who came from Bavel to Yerushalayim, and they saw the second base of Mikdash, and they began wailing. They said, Oy vey ribono shel olam. We remember what it used to look like. Remember that feeling of the Shekhinah there. There's no Shekhinah here. We want to make sure that when we open the door to our homes, Friday night, Shabbos morning, Shabbos afternoon, we want to make sure that it's a home that because that we don't do the malachas, we're building our Mishkan down here in this world, and the Shekhinah is going to dwell amongst us. So Amietz Hashem, in this last Shabbos of Parshas of Sefer Shmos, it's a triple header this week. It's Shabbos Mevarchim, which is we're going to bless for the new month of Nisan, month of miracles. It is Shabbos HaChodesh, a special one of the parashas we speak about the first mitzvah that the Jewish people received in Mitzrayim, which was the new moon. And it's Chazak, it's Parshas Chazak, it's the end of the long, beautiful Sefer Shmos. So it's a powerful Shabbos. There's a lot of koyach, a lot of power. Amietz Hashem will make the efforts to guard this Shabbos in a way like we haven't done before. Even those of us that are keeping Shabbos, we can always do so much better. There's so much more Kedusha, there's so much more holiness and sanctity that we can put into our day. How we talk at the table, the songs that we sing at the table, what we do in shul, how we behave in shul, all that it just enhances how we keep the halachas better than we did last week. And in that way, by removing ourselves and disconnecting from the world of malacha, Hashem is going to bring the ultimate, His Shekhinah down into our lives. So Be'ez Hashem, we should have a uplifting, holy experience this Shabbos. Bas Menucha, the real peace should come to us. It should change our learning, our davening, our family time, our speech, our actions, all because we're living a Shabbos where the Shekhinah is right here together with us. Good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.